It was just listening to them and just acknowledging it's been a shit show for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And while I get it that you're being told at home to be grateful for what you have, and as one should be, but first you have to acknowledge your pain. So I think these human, authentic emotions are not lost, whether it's on Zoom or in person. Holidays, right? We have like this big thing, people were talking, oh, I won't be able to see my family. What about kids who don't have families? So really meeting people where they are. And I think for me, that's one of my biggest strengths. I can meet people where they are. You know, my dad always says that, like in India, you don't have to be a Rockefeller to be able to afford help, right? So like my dad always says, his staff is always smiling when I visit. Because, you know, there is the class system and the difference where people are like, you're the maid and you're the driver.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. You are only as successful as people connect with you.
Working at events since 2005, I've always been inspired by people coming together to share ideas. I'm Amanda Younger, and I'll be your host on Happy Hour, where I share a drink and a laugh with guests over stories and our hope for the future of the live event experience. Today, I'm speaking with Sweta Vikram, marketing manager turned author, and now the CEO of Ayurveda-based health and mindset coach. Thank you to Society de Rum Barbancourt for their rum produced from Haitian sugar cane juice. Founded in 1862, the company is one of Haiti's oldest companies, and its rum is the country's most famous exports, widely regarded as among the finest rums in the world. Finally, thank you to Cheeky Cocktails for the fresh ingredients. Today, we use their lime juice. Be sure to check out their products online and use the code HAPPYHOUR for a special discount. Special thank you to Loxamina Media, You Create, We Capture. And be sure to continue the conversation with us online at EventSpeak.com. We've spent this time offline to improve your experience with our show here. We have completely updated the website, show descriptions, put in articles with links to increase the expansion into articles and topics that we touch on in the shows. So make sure you check it out. You can learn more and kind of delve a little bit deeper on where our future in the industry is going to be. Subscribe on Apple and Google Podcasts, follow us on Spotify and iHeartRadio, and favorite us on Stitcher to get all upcoming episodes and help others find our show. Be sure to comment below. We love as much feedback as possible in our early stages. A promotional giveaway is on, and a lucky listener will be randomly picked from our followers, sharing and commenting on our Facebook and Instagram at Happy Hour AY. Together, we make the difference in live events. Welcome back to Happy Hour. I'm Amanda Younger, your host for today, and I'm meeting with my fabulous friend Sweta, who's with me for another happy hour, but I am actually drinking a Cuba Libra, and it's basically like a rum and Coke, but I'm having the rum Barbancourt, and it's from Haiti. And the reason that I'm actually doing this is because our mutual friend, Mandy Kelso, gifted me this Haitian rum, which is why I thought I would have it today with Coke and lime juice. And of course, I used lime juice from Cheeky Cocktails, which is also a great friend of Happy Hour. Go ahead and tell everyone who you are, what you do, and what you're drinking for Happy Hour.
Hi, this is Sweta. I'm very happy to be here. I was telling Amanda I had to log into work super early. So I'm drinking water for Happy Hour. Like I've been at work since 4 a.m. So I have a day job. And then I have my business and I have my clients and I have my writing and I'm in school and I teach yoga. I write weekly columns for a magazine called Seema. I am an author of 12 books. My 13th book comes out this fall. It's titled A Piece of Peace. Thank you. I am a global speaker and an Ayurveda-based mindset and wellness coach. What does that mean? Well, I basically help you thrive on your own terms by enhancing your creativity, your productivity, Ayurvedic diet and lifestyle and mindfulness. I help you thrive in your relationships. And, when we are well, we are happy and perform better. We feel more creative. We feel more motivated. So all of this is linked, guys. And in my spare time, I do teach yoga, trauma survivors and incarcerated men and women.
Beautiful. When we first met, you were a marketing manager, but like basically a motivational speaker and coach for all of these other marketing professionals, coaching them to succeed.
It's interesting. In my day job, which is with a nonprofit, a lot of marketing. And so it's my second age of storytelling, essentially. And I feel like storytelling is so essential to our planet, humanity. It's almost like we owe it to the next generation. It helps us understand cultures better. It irons out nuances. It makes us more curious. It helps us celebrate big and small moments. So I think in my across everything that I do, that storytelling is so key.
What was kind of the spark that led you to, start another career on top of your current one into writing? Because I actually have a few here, a lot of your poetry, but then also I have your Louisiana Catch, which was a full-blown novel.
So, the one thing I've always known about myself is I'm very good with keeping other people's secrets. The non-judgment part has come over the years. When you're younger, you're like, you have your opinion and you think that's the best. The third thing was writing. So even as a little girl, I would practice my autograph. I just knew one day I would be signing copies of my books. I didn't know what that meant. It just resonated very deeply with me. So I've been writing my entire life. I was the chief editor of my boarding school's magazine. Then I got into, and when you don't have, and I say this for myself, I didn't have those many experiences to write about in a personal essay. So poetry just, you do your rhyming poetry and it's just like sweet and cute. As you get older, you go through life experiences. To me, how I make sense of the world is through writing. So I also started to write nonfiction and write columns for magazines and things like that. And a novel was just waiting to happen. So I always say this, nonfiction is bare truth, right? You're there. It's a sweet way of addressing something. Fiction gives you a mass to write about social issues. For me, wellness and social issues and women's empowerment. I thought Louisiana Catch was just that. It addresses, this is April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And, a protagonist is a sexual assault survivor. Now, I have to be honest, I'm not a survivor, and thank God. But it's just that I have friends who are survivors, and they are amongst us. We have this perception of what survivors look like. We have this judgment around why didn't this one leave an abusive relationship? I feel like combining all of this made me a much more empathetic person. Like, you don't know another person's situation. And just because someone has money doesn't mean they can't pay for the bare necessities. They haven't been abused. So when these women who walk into my classroom to practice yoga, they're just survivors, and the people closest to them have hurt them. And there have been times where for 2 years, no one has looked me in the eye because, their own people hurt them. And so I think all of it was just the storytelling, even through yoga. I think it just all goes back to storytelling. And even in my coaching, there's storytelling. It's like, and you know me, Amanda, like my work is intense, but I'm not like, I love fun. I love dancing. I love like my booty shimmying and all of that stuff. And I think like the whole storytelling bit, it makes it so much more fun because we are all human and we are all connected at a basic level. Yeah.
I love it. Well, what kind of disciplines from your day job, from your corporate life, your nonprofit life, what sort of disciplines there have been able to, help you in your other work and your coaching? And then kind of like is there any certain disciplines that you really kind of had to throw away that were kind of impeding that, the coaching and the rest of your work? The wellness, I should say.
I love this question. No, I really love this question. I say this because I've had this conversation with a lot of people, because for a lot of artists, creative professionals, the process of creativity, or they like calling themselves creative professionals. And they've often shared with me like, but once the book is done, then it's out there, right? So it becomes like someone is calling your baby certain things that you don't want to hear. Because of my corporate background, it's not like that I don't care, but I'm like, yeah, it's a project. Next. So I think it brings in that discipline of whatever happens, you write daily. For me, yoga and writing, they happen daily. Sometimes it's 2 hours. Other days it's 10 minutes, but it is daily dedication without ego. A, that, and B, I've never had the privilege of just being, like I wasn't trained to just be a writer because of my corporate career, my nonprofit background, I've also known just because I write something, people won't fall in love with it. I have to be okay with feedback. So hence the relationship with the editor comes in, right? Or even when a reader might say, I don't like this book, doesn't mean that I don't get impacted, but I bounce back really quickly. Because you know what? I didn't write the book. No one promised me everybody would like this. So just when you do a presentation, 80% people would be like, Amanda is the best thing since sliced bread. But then 20% like, oh yeah, she sucks. So it's the same thing with writing. But I think that's the practical aspect of having a job. At least for me, allows me to be a more professional artist. It's about whether it's showing up daily, whether it's maintaining deadlines. It's like one of my editors recently reached out to me and he was like, it's really fun working with you. And I was like, oh, thank you. But why do you say that? Like, we haven't met socially, so you haven't seen my fun side. He was like, no, you meet deadlines always. You don't need to be reminded. And I was like, it's because of my background. Mm-hmm. You won't have if you don't meet deadlines. It impacts your paycheck. It impacts your bonus. It impacts your promotions. And it's just, how do you navigate your world as a professional? Like, if I have a responsibility and if I can't show up to it, then who am I within the professional world? So I think all of those aspects have really helped me hone in later. And even as a coach, and this is something I still struggle with because I love people and empathy is a big part of what I do. Sometimes I have to work with boundaries in that, my dad always jokes about it. Like we could be in the randomest corner of the world. If someone has a sob story, they'll find me and they'll share it with me. So like I said at the start, I'm very good with keeping people's secrets. And for some reason, I have a face where people think it's okay to come and tell me what I'm through. So I've had this. So I think part of why I got into coaching was I was like, oh, I'm able to do certain things. People are able to relate to me, mm-hmm. able to create that safe space. Mm-hmm. And also help them, not as a therapist, but from an Ayurvedic mindset and wellness space. But yes, that's where my yoga practice comes in. To help somebody else, I don't have to become their suffering, which mm-hmm. was not something that I was taught in corporate. You become very angry because everything should have happened yesterday. But being in that space has allowed me, no, it's okay. If I'm not an ER doctor, it shouldn't be delayed, but nothing should have happened yesterday. It's okay. Right. So I think just those aspects I had to leave behind of my corporate life. Mm-hmm. I got into starting my own stuff. And this, as a woman, we face many challenges. And as a woman of color, so many more. And then when you're a woman who's trying to run a business, a family, and a job, the challenges are on a different level. And at some point, I had to understand, it's okay to ball every now and then. Mm-hmm. And when you make a mistake, people around you learn to chill out too. This perfectionism is a disease. And I am a recovering artist. It's just because I'm it doesn't mean you do a half-assed job. It just means it's okay if you can't meet everything that you aspire to. That also means trim down your to-do list, which again, mm-hmm. with the corporate background, you have these 20 million things to do because we have, or in a nonprofit where, the funds are, and the teams are smaller, you again have these two. And then it's no, it's okay to also take a breath in between. It makes me more productive. Yeah. So it's been interesting how I think no experience ever goes to waste, right? It always adds value or teaches you a lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've had to learn. The point was, it's okay to fail. That's how you learn. Don't let the idea of possible failure keep you from moving forward. Take the risk, make the jump. If you fail, then learn. And if you don't, then, yay. Don't be scared of it. And that's always something that a lot of people have to overcome is the fear of failure.
It's just the social conditioning as well, mm-hmm. Where failure is a bad thing. Right. Mistakes are a bad thing. We were, I was on a conference call, and the number of us who joked about across different cultures, races, and ethnicities, where I would get a 96% and the pair, what happened to the 4%? And it was literally across different cultures, ethnicities, and races. And as little kids, that conditioning goes into you, mm-hmm. what happened? Yeah. Not to celebrate the 96, we mourned over the 4%, and that becomes a habit as an adult. And it's so important to share this with kids that it's okay. Don't be a procrastinator and don't slack. But you know what? If you tried your best and that best was where it met you today, that's fine. Let's celebrate.
Yeah. But I also wanted to just kind of ask you, I mean, some of the issues that you discuss in your writings, they are heavy issues. What was it that made you say gravitate to these issues and say, like, this is it, this is what I need to share?
So for me, authenticity is extremely important, and really feeling the feels is very important. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't pretend. And I'm not saying it's the best quality. I've tried and it doesn't work for me. So to give you a little background, I've grown up across 3 continents, 3 cultures, North Africa, India, and then the US. So I picked up stories and now because somebody else, a lot of people have asked me this, like, why did I start writing about such intense topics when I have a pretty personality? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I was picking up stories along the way. I was always curious. I remember when my parents lived in North Africa, there was this gentleman who had a truck, and the sheep sat up front with him and his 4 wives sat in the back. Mm-hmm. And I think I was 7 or 8. And I asked my dad why. He was like, because in this country, he just told me, like, very matter of fact and not with any space of judgment. He was like, in this culture, a woman is considered dispensable, but a sheep is expensive. So this man had the sheep sit up front while the women sat in the back, right? We would visit the homes of certain locals, and there were separate living rooms for men and women. So this was it. And then even in India, I saw a lot of patriarchy. I saw misogyny. I didn't know those terms as a little girl, but I saw different rules for men. I saw different rules for women. If there was a widow in the house, not so much our family, because my dad is a big feminist, but I knew, like, widows were 2 different places where all the other widows lived, where they were devoid of color or flavors and they had to shave their heads while men got remarried, right? And then I moved to the US. I saw misogyny and patriarchy on a very nuanced, suave level. It wasn't in your face, but it exists in every job, at every institution. So I was trying to embrace these cultures and trying to understand what all this means. Got introduced to deeper concept of what feminism is, what patriarchy is, what is. And, and while I was understanding that, then those stories from my childhood started coming back to me. So in Hannah, the female protagonist in Louisiana, sexual assault survivor, in her marriage, I had a roommate in college. She was actually 2 years my senior. And the guy she was at the time, his sister, she was good friends with him, had just gotten married. Yeah. And, they were like this super ridiculously wealthy family, the top 2% and of thing. She was a lawyer herself. So, it's all the check boxes. And my roommate shared with me, and she couldn't share with her boyfriend because she's like, this guy will go and kill his sister's husband. The husband was raping his wife every single night. I kid you not, I was 18. I did not understand. Thought rape was something that strangers did. Also, remember, I grew up in a boarding school, sheltered. So, this concept was very alien to me. Like, it was stranger danger. Danger exists at home. So I think that story stayed with me. Then slowly over the years, I had friends who shared with me, this happened to me, this uncle did this, or this one did this. It wasn't always stranger danger. And I started to look into statistics of marital assault, and there are countries which legalize marital assault because to them, a husband has the right. So I was like, and then when I looked at my own world, like, people we socialize with have stories. And so that was the thing, like, survivors don't live inside of these spaces. They are all amongst us, right? And what happens to their stories happens to them. So I think that was me trying to make sense of the world around me, the stories that I'd grown up with, and I was finally able to define them. Ooh, sheep more than the women. Oh, that's patriarchy and misogyny. Separate spaces for widows and widowed men get remarried. Oh, that's patriarchy and misogyny on a whole different level. Right. So I think it's trying to understand the layers of the world, and stories gave me an avenue. And yoga for me has really helped me detach, because in the beginning I would get sucked into these stories. And,
Yeah.
Sometimes you think of your non-abusive life as a privilege. It's really not true. No one should have to suffer, but I would feel guilty. I'm like, and my husband, he's like the sweetest, kindest guy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I have this, and these women going through that. And so I was like, okay, this is dysfunctional. I can't think that way. But I see so many people who work in this space get burnt out quickly because you suffering.
Yep.
And I think so. I went from practicing yoga to teaching yoga to learning yoga to living yoga, because it gave me that space that you don't have to be suffering to empathize. You have to have a pranic container where you contain yourself. So you're available to people, but this is also here. You protect yourself and you replenish yourself with. Someday it might be a glass of wine. Other days it might be a run or yoga. Some days it might be just a soak. Other days it might be Netflixing with a friend or my. You know what I mean? Like, figure out what sustains you, because you can't keep doing things from an empty space.
Right. Oh, that's great. So with the new book coming out, are there any plans for a book tour? The last time I saw you, you were actually doing a book reading. Are we able to see a new book reading, or, kind of how are you going to do your speaking engagements with your new fans, with your new project?
I have left so much to we'll see when the time comes, just because of, I think last year, this time we thought by now we'd be fine and we'd be, the new norm, going out there doing things. But no one knows. Like, so the book is scheduled to be out this fall. No one knows what that looks like, right? No one knows what the publishing process would look like, because everyone's family has been impacted. So I'm working from that space of do your work, don't be attached to the outcome. If things are better, we do it. Otherwise, we do it on Zoom. So it's also like making me rethink, right? Why do I write? Well, I love engaging with people. And my energy in sulking into, I won't be able to do it in person, or figure out how else can I reach the people, especially because this is nonfiction and it's a collection of essays which will be very to people, no matter what they do. So it's like, how do I increase my reach so people can benefit from this information and take care of them and their creativity and their productivity. So I think time will only tell what things look like in the fall. But it's literally, that's become my mantra, show up to your work. Don't, just because you did the work doesn't mean success will happen.
That's right. Oh, well, that's great. It's kind of refreshing a little bit to be like, hey, you know what? We're going to be on a rolling basis. We're going to change what this is month to month. So everyone needs to kind of roll with the punches. And it's been kind of a fun, it's been able to break kind of that planning perfectionist, right? And being like, okay, I need to plan to a certain degree, but for the rest of this, I need to actually become more flexible.
I think the letting go aspect is just so good for your overall emotional and mental well-being, right? Like the rigid, especially as type A New Yorkers, we can be so rigid about this. When you start to think that way, I just feel we become more open to ideas, more open to collaborations. I always like the idea of people coming together. I love events being about people.
Well, with the current pandemic, you've actually been training and you've gotten certified in health and wellness coaching.
So I have to say this, you know this about me, Amanda, I never stop learning. I think when my breath leaves my body is when I won't be in school. So this has been going on for a while. It was more on the back burner. There were other things. But I think after my mom's death, so which was 7 years ago, it became very front and center for me.
Yeah.
And I did get certified as an Ayurveda counselor and a few years ago, but I just felt I was ready for more into clinical stuff as well, and well-being aspect. Like, it's okay to not be okay. And when you don't feel okay for X number of days, then talk to someone. To take this on. So I think it's a journey that's been going on for a while. And I think this the pandemic just brought it to forefront. And because the classes are online, I wish I was there with my classmates in person, but it just makes it more accessible
Yeah.
that I can do this from home right now. What about the client? And, when the pandemic hit, like for a month or 2 months, I had workshops in 2020 booked until October.
Mm-hmm.
And then the pandemic hit, everything got canceled. So then restarting, I think it took people about 6 weeks to figure out, okay, this is here for a while. Let's just move to a virtual medium. So it took companies, individuals, and I had to be patient. And that constant reminder was, it's not about me. We are all literally in all of us in this together. So I think I started to grow, because saying I'm compassionate and jumping from one subway to the other is very different from, when you have nothing and you still find compassion to do things for others. Given us an opportunity to grow as people, should we choose to. It also gave us an opportunity to be face down in pecan pie, guilty. But yes, I think that's what it's. Me too. Oh my God. In the beginning, when you couldn't get groceries delivered, like Instacart, and conversations were about, do you have groceries? Pecan pie. I was like, if I'm gonna die, I'd rather be face down in pecan pie.
Deliver pecan pie me now.
And I was like, I haven't eaten so much pecan pie in like all these years on this planet as much as I have in 6 weeks. But so it's you have to be kind, right? But at least then there also comes a point at what point are we letting it go, and at what point are we being kind? And I think for everyone the answer is different. It starts to manifest in different ways. So typically when I work with trauma survivors, I am in a physical. Here it's on Zoom. People who've been incarcerated, right?
Yeah.
It was very not scary in terms of like I would be there for them 500%. And this is when Black Lives Matter was, everything that was going on.
Yeah.
And Amanda, I remember this one day. So I would do these themed workshops, and this one gentleman in my class, he's an African-American gentleman, lovely guy, absolutely delightful. And we were talking about gratitude. And so what are you grateful for? And he was like, ma'am, I'm a black guy. I'm a black man in America, and I'm still breathing. What more could I be grateful for? And I was like, it was so profound. And I think conversations like that, we realized, oh my God, I was so on the right path because there was something that was working.
Yeah.
Even if he had that one person to talk to, and he taught me so much, right? About gratitude. We get whiny about, I haven't gone on vacation for a year. And then when you realize someone is just saying gratitude for breathing, it shifts your perspective.
If it wasn't for you experiencing and hearing that from him and telling me that as well, that wouldn't remind me that there's still an insane amount of injustice in this world. And that together we can help, and together we can help make this better and improve his gratitude.
And by having these conversations
to a higher level. Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just saying I'm an ally doesn't help. Right. It's the same thing. Like I've heard a lot of women, like survivors, it's fine. He lets me do that. And in my head, what do you mean it lets you do that? You're not a pet.
Yeah.
Like it's not okay. But it's just meeting people where they are. Yeah. So today you think this is what you're grateful for. Tomorrow maybe you'll think, no, your life is yours, not somebody else's to control. So I think also the conversations that we have to meet people where they are. Anger is necessary, the disappointment is necessary, but it's also about being present with them where they are, so they feel okay talking about where they are.
I think that's actually a very beautiful learning point that you can pass on is being present with everyone that you kind of touch base with, especially with their stories. How do you do that in Zoom? How's that worked for you?
It's been very transformative because I did get new clients in 2020. I
You
think the
did?
one thing
Okay.
was I did. People, be it in the schools, colleges,
Yeah.
companies, they realized mental well being, emotional well being was at stake. They needed to do something.
Got it.
And so, A, it was that. And B, I think people are missing the human connection, the hug.
Mhm.
And it's not going to be the same as when you see people in person.
Yeah.
But I think, eyes are a lot. So when people are like, but I can't tell through the mask. I said, I can tell who's smiling.
Yeah.
I can tell who's sad because the eyes are a mirror into the world. I cuss, I swear, I'll make boo-boos, even when I'm doing these sessions, because you know what? The pandemic has taught us this, take everything so seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also because of my corporate and nonprofit background. So for a lot of entrepreneurs or corporate professionals, like, for me, it's like, do what works for you.
Yeah.
I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you as a guide. It was just listening to them and just acknowledging it's been a shit show for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And while I get it that you're being told at home to be grateful for what you have, and as one should be, but first you have to acknowledge your pain. So I think these human, authentic emotions are not lost, whether it's on Zoom or in person. Holidays, right? We have like this big thing, people were talking, oh, I won't be able to see my family. What about kids who don't have families? So
Yeah.
really meeting people where they are. And I think for me, that's one of my biggest strengths. I can meet people where they are. My dad always says that, like in India, you don't have to be a Rockefeller to be able to afford help, right? So, like my dad always says, his staff is always smiling when I visit. Because, there is the class system and the difference where people are like, you're the maid and you're the driver.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. You are only as successful as people connect with you.
Mm-hmm.
You're only as happy as how much happiness you can share with others. Live inside you could be like this brightest scholar, but if you can't relate to people, what's the point? So meet people where they are, I think, has been such a key learning for me, because you know what, we are all dealing with our own crap. I just really think the pandemic has taken a toll. We are all emotionally exhausted.
Yeah.
We have good days and we have not so good days. We are all coping.
Yeah.
And it's okay. My outlet is a lot of physical exercise. The gym is closed, the yoga studio is closed. Like, how much of indoor yoga can you do?
Yeah. Well, so is that your coach? So if you're helping so many others in their wellness, has yoga become your coach?
100%. Yoga and Ayurveda both, because Ayurveda, what kind of diet and lifestyle are conducive for my personality, my innate nature. And yoga just tells me to be more than my identity, to be more than it's great to be a teacher on some days and a student on the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When small, or even, well, I guess when like large gatherings kind of open back up again, will we start seeing some group workshops, maybe for professionals or students, or are you gonna
I would
move
love
back
that.
to group workshops maybe?
I would still like to do hybrid because
Okay.
Of virtual learning. I've worked with folks in London. So it's opened up. I've worked with folks in other countries.
Yeah.
And I'd like to keep the hybrid model, but there's nothing like in person and a tight hug and sharing a cup of chai and some stories, and to be able to take the subway. Like, look, my 10,000 steps. Like right now, it's not easy.
No, but I like to hear. I like hearing that it's created a global audience for you, even.
It has.
Yeah.
And it's also allowed me to promote other women business owners and amplify them. So I write a weekly column for this magazine called SEMA Magazine, which is slated to be the Oprah of the South Asian world. And, when they gave me this offer, the column is called The Balanced Life. And I was like, this is my opportunity to promote. It helped me tell stories of other women too. And how do we grow? how do we get out of this funk together? It's not about like, I don't this. I have the opportunity, I have the privilege to be in a place where I can share stories. Why does it have to be just my story?
Right.
The more different I have, the more inspiring it is. If I get to talk about another woman's business, her challenges, her strengths, why wouldn't I do that? Approach life with a growth mindset. Like, there's enough for all of us. There's just enough. And it's important to sow the right seeds.
Absolutely. Well, you're a global citizen, so I like hearing that you have a global audience, because that's how it should be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Well,
I think it's been so great talking to you.
Oh, well, fantastic. What else is on the horizon for you? What are you looking at in the future for you and your growth?
So I'm also going to be launching a couple of courses this year. That's the intention, like basic stuff to deal with stress relief, emotional exhaustion, without being didactic, like not making people feel small about their choices. Not, this is what you have, we work with, I'll meet you where you are, right? So those are the two things. And I think for myself, my whole yoga Ayurveda has deepened on a different level, because, we all had to find some ways to find our, to stay centered. And I've also realized, like, everyone is going through so much that it's important to rely on people. But unless you rely on yourself, unless you are best friends with yourself, unless your own darkness, unless you're okay with solitude, you can truly never appreciate company. So I think for me, 2020 has been a year of growth on a different level, not because I chose, because there was no running anywhere.
Right.
You either could sit at home and cry about, oh, this shit has happened, or you sit at home and you say, oh, this has happened. There's a purpose behind it. What can I do? How can I help others? Because also when you help others, you're also helping yourself. So what is my purpose? Like in Sanskrit, there's a word called dharma. What is my purpose? And I think I found my life's purpose during the pandemic, because I paused. And
I think that's something that a lot of us are starting to discover. Our priorities and our purpose. Just stopping for a second, stopping the grind, stopping the wheel, and actually kind of looking.
And also cleaning up. Yeah. And witnessing how much noise we've had in our lives. Like, we only have so much time. I'd rather not have shallow relationships.
Quality over quantity happens all the time.
Any day. Unless it's picantai.
Yes, right.
Not that.
Well, let's go ahead and tell the listeners how they can learn more.
Oh, thank you. So my website, swetavikram.com. My social handles are on there. You can sign up for my newsletter, the intention is to start sending them out this month, filled with beautiful tips so you can take better care of yourselves. I'll share links to some podcasts that I enjoy, hint, books and things like that. So yeah, there are various ways. And if you want me, there's a contact form. So again, website is sweta Vikram, vikram.com. All the information is on there. And whoever is listening, I would just want you to know that you matter. This pandemic has made us feel lonely on some days. And I just really, honestly, with the heart, you matter, and your every breath matters.
Your existence in breathing matters. And we hear you. So, well, of course, at the end, and we'll add all of these links in the description. So you guys don't worry. We've got it there for you. But of course, at the end of every happy hour, when we kind of finish the drink, we're feeling a little lubricated. We always like to end with a little dance. So how do you feel about dancing off with me? How you feeling? Yeah. Okay.